Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair. Good morning, dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Australia's only radio program that is totally dedicated to the Palestinian cause in English language. I would like to welcome our listeners on the AM dial on 855 AM and online on 3cr.org.au/podcasts. In this episode, we will be talking about the Roy Morgan poll that was released yesterday on Palestine. Also, the 30th of March commemorates the Land Day that Palestinians worldwide commemorates. And we will be talking also about the call for hunger strike inside Israeli jails. For this and more, stay with us and enjoy the episode. Good morning, Nasser.
Good morning, Yusuf. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. We have a few topics this week. We will start with the Roy Morgan poll on Palestine that was released only yesterday. Tell us more.
Well, as you know, Yusuf, we were just looking at these results and it's really, really heartening. So Roy Morgan was commissioned by a group of Palestinian advocacy organisations led by APAN, the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network.
So Roy Morgan is a polling...
the most professional and longest-standing polling organisation in Australia, 100 plus years. Mm-hmm. So this Morgan poll is in fact the fourth one that this group of Palestinian advocacy organisations has put together. And the first one was in 2009. So that's APAN, FOPA in Australian Friends of Palestine Association in Adelaide, Australians of Palestine, the Coalition for Justice in Palestine and Friends of Bethlehem all contributed. And our best results ever, Yusuf, if I can share some of the numbers with our listeners and yourself, 73% of those polled, and this is for our listeners to understand, when an organisation like Morgan puts a poll together, they take a representation of age groups, of demographics, of education levels, of income levels, so
and age level
and everything.
Income,
So when they use such a huge, broad range of demographics, what you do is in fact take out any guesswork, and so when you get these numbers, it
what
actually
they call statistically representative.
Correct. This is the group is statistically representative of the greater population. 73%, Yusuf, 73%, that's 3 in 4 people, have an overwhelming majority, expressed support for the recognition of Palestinian statehood.
Excellent. So three quarters of the Australian population are in support of the Palestinian state, which doesn't sound like what we hear from our officials.
No. And that's up from 62%. Now, you've got to remember that 3 in 4 people want to recognise Palestine, and Mr Turnbull had Mr Netanyahu here and was treating him like he was the Queen. What's particularly heartening, Yusuf, and this is something, we introduced this question just recently and on the back of a similar survey in Canada, and we asked specifically about the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment and sanctions. And, specifically, the question is, how do you regard a call for a boycott of Israeli goods, services, companies and institutions profiting from the occupation of Palestine? Do you think it's reasonable? And 55% of Australians thought it was reasonable that Palestinians would issue a call for BDS.
Excellent. Well, I'm not going to comment on that now, but I want to hear first
Okay.
because I'm really excited.
Yeah,
And by the way, this is genuinely new news to me.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, the results are only got released at embargo lifted at 12:01 midnight Friday morning. So it's hot, very hot off the presses. Of course, in any poll, Yusuf, because they're going to be statistically representative of the population, we managed to encounter some Zionists. 8% opposed recognition of Palestine, and 1 in 4 people thought that a call for a boycott was unreasonable.
1 in?
1 in 4.
Okay.
So 25%.
Yeah.
61% of those surveyed opposed the construction of Israeli settlements in occupied territories, and 53% said they opposed the Turnbull government's rejection of UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which was the Obama one just before Christmas.
Which is the resolution that condemned the expansion of Israeli settlements.
Correct. So 53%, over half of the population. Only 17% surveyed indicated support for Israeli settlements, and 29% supported the government's rejection of the UN resolution.
Fantastic.
34% of those surveyed indicated their sympathies laid with the Palestinians, whereas only 26% indicated support for the Israelis. So this is the first time we're actually in the lead there. Only those aged 65 years and older were more sympathetic to the Israelis than the Palestinians. It was 37 to 32, so even there it's close.
So the younger generation
Correct.
is more in support of the Palestinian struggle
Correct.
than the older.
One of the standout numbers, if you will, was the numbers for tertiary educated people. For tertiary educated people, 41% were in favour of had a sympathy towards the Palestinians, whilst only 23% had sympathy towards the Israelis. So I might just quickly read a quote from Bishop John Browning, who's the president of the Australian Palestine Advocacy Network, who led the survey. Australians might not feel particularly well informed about the conflict, but they're not stupid. They understand that colonising somebody else's country is always wrong. They support the United Nations in its opposition to Israeli settlements, and they also understand that recognising Palestinian statehood and boycotting institutions that profit from the occupation are both reasonable and non-violent means of promoting a peaceful solution to the conflict. He went on to say, the poll indicates that the Australian public is way out in front of the major parties on the issue of Palestine. In this regard, politicians need to listen more to their constituents and less to the Australian Israel lobby in formulating its policy. So very strong statements and great results.
Very strong statements, and I really would like to congratulate APAN for basically funding this poll and coming up with this brilliant idea. And here we are not talking just speculations.
And the best thing about this data, Yusuf, is this is our 4th poll since 2009, and so we've been able to track these questions statistically over now almost 9 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know what we do in Palestinian and Arab culture. So if you bring a good news, you owe me some sweets.
We will bring the sweets.
Halawan.
Halawan.
So you owe me some sweets.
Well, you know, moving on from the poll that shows that the Australian constituents are way out in front on Palestine.
Sorry, before you, is there a way where our listeners is there a place where they can maybe find where the report is?
My word. So they can, we'll put a hyperlink on the podcast, but if they go to apan.org.au, they'll find the full details of the survey.
Excellent.
But following on from that poll, which shows that the Australian public is way out in front of our politicians, in the same week that the Morgan poll was released here that we commissioned, in Israel, there's a group called the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, and they commissioned a leading Israeli pollster, Myrna Tesmark, and the survey was called A Survey of Israeli Jewish Attitudes on a Future Peace Agreement with the Palestinians.
Say it again, please.
A survey of Israeli Jewish attitudes on future peace agreement with the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we just spoke about the Australians and where they are at with respect to this question. Now, this poll was conducted and released this week, and the purpose of the survey was to examine the attitudes of the Jewish public on Israel. And it's important to define the Jewish public because they're not asking Palestinians of Israel, on several issues regarding the peace agreement. The main findings: there's a decrease in support for a withdrawal from the West Bank and the establishment of a Palestinian state. There's been a decrease in Jewish Israeli willingness to agree to withdrawal from the West Bank as part of a peace agreement. And this has gone down from 60% in 2005, Jewish Israelis, 60% of them said we should withdraw. It's down to 36% now.
Mm.
And the agreement that they referenced was the Clinton parameters. And to give people an idea of the Clinton parameters, this is what they were asking the people they were polling, what do you think of this? Within the Clinton parameters was a demilitarized Palestinian state without settlement blocks, full Palestinian security control over the West Bank, i.e. Palestinian self-determination, Jerusalem divided between, but as a capital for both states.
Or what he said, what's Arab is Palestinian and what's Jewish is Israeli.
Yeah. That Aqsa would be in the hands of the Palestinians, but the Wailing Wall would be in the hands of the Israelis. Now, this
proposal was put in year 2000.
2000, correct. Now, these are the Clinton parameters, and this is the question that has been continuous through this poll that the Israelis have done to Jewish Israelis.
Mm.
And as generous as that is to Israelis, I mean, because the reality of that isn't anywhere near our minimum standard for statehood.
Especially that we're splitting East Jerusalem.
Correct.
Mm.
As generous as was, in 2005, support for it was 59%. In 2017, it's 29%. And this 29 falls to just 18% if they add to the question, if the Israelis don't have full military control of the West Bank.
Full military control.
So, full military control. So, you're a Palestinian, I don't even know what you'd call that. But
you can't call that a state.
It's not a state. 18%. No. So, that's 1 in 5 people would support peace under those parameters. So, I mean, when we hear this fallacy that, Israelis want peace and that Netanyahu's far right wing, he's actually representative of the populace. 79% say it's important to retain a unified Jerusalem.
Mm.
That's 8 in 10 Israelis who think it's important to delineate this. It's important, firstly, to delineate Jewish Israelis from the Palestinian citizens of Israel, because we're only polling the Jewish people. That 8 in 10 Israelis are happy to continue occupying East Jerusalem, Palestine, the West Bank, in breach of UN resolutions, in breach of international law. They're happy to be as an outlier. 8 in 10 Israelis.
Mm.
I mean, it beggars belief. It's why BDS is so important.
When we say that populism and right-wing is on the rise in Israel, we're not exaggerating. And we've said that since it's been nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's been 7 years since the arrival of Netanyahu and his right-wing government, his coalition with Avigdor Lieberman. And the first week they arrived in power in 2010, they thought of 2 legislations. First is to force the Arab or the Palestinian Israelis to pledge allegiance to the Jewish state and to ban the commemoration of Nakba.
Yep.
They wanted to pass legislations to incriminate the commemoration of the loss of land and expulsion of people, and to make it illegal. This is in the first week, which means that, do you remember the first week of Trump? How he
rushed through all of his policies?
All of his policies. It was the same. We've seen that in Israel, but the world didn't focus on it because it's Israel.
Well, the world still thinks that this is a shining beacon of democracy and that it needs to be applauded and supported. The people aren't there.
Maybe the world doesn't think. The leaders,
correct.
Because according to our poll,
according to Roy Morgan,
the people are not buying this myth, and they really have come to conclusion. I mean, it all requires eyes opening. You don't need to have a master's degree in international relations. You don't need to be an expert in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You don't need to spend years or months living under occupation. You just have to have common sense, and you should not have predetermined opinion and view on Palestine, to just come to the conclusion that the Palestinians are subjugated to oppression and occupation, and that there is an entity called Israel is the only reason.
It's the perpetuator. So, no question. And just a sliver of humanity would get any human being to that point. And when asked about withdrawal from the West Bank as part of a peace agreement and the establishment of a Palestinian state, 77% of Jewish Israelis, 3 in 4, oppose it. These Israelis, they're choosing, occupation, subjugation, and apartheid over peace.
This is why I don't think if there will ever be a peace settlement with Israel, I don't think we should wait for Israelis to give us away our rights. I think we should reach a formula to force Israel to accept our rights, because if it's up to them, we're not going to get it. It's not up to them.
No oppressor ever gave away.
We're going to force them to give us, not to give us, to get back our rights, and forcing them with non-violent
and that's what
means.
the boycott, divestment sanctions is.
The boycott, divestment, the diplomatic pressure, the popular resistance, any form of political and popular and non-violent means. We cannot wait for Israelis to just or to bet on the goodwill of Israelis.
We cannot rely on the goodwill of Jewish Israelis. We cannot.
No, it's not up to them.
81% say it's important that Israel retain sovereignty over the Jordan Valley, i.e. Palestine's border with Jordan. So a Palestinian state would be fully enclosed by Israel. Tiny enclaves and little statelets. And we've seen this sort of thing before, where the controlling entity has, exit and entry, water, air rights, etc. And this is a Bantustan, which is apartheid South Africa. And this is why the experiment has continued there.
Very important conclusions from Australia, really heartening conclusions that the population is sympathetic to the struggle of Palestinians for independence and freedom and self-determination. Another disappointing conclusion from Israel, from the Jewish citizens of Israel. However, we will definitely come back to more reflections on these issues in future episodes, but we will continue the program. We'll listen to a song now, and we will come back with the Land Day, Yawmul Ard. This is the 41st anniversary of the Land Day. Stay with us, and we will be back. Nasser, the song we're listening to is very famous in the Palestinian memory. It's Unadikum, and it was written for the occasion of the Land Day, which we are going to talk about soon, by, I would say, the Palestinian poet Tawfiq Zayyad, who was a member of the Zali Knesset. Unadikum, which means I call upon you, and what later became the Land Day. It is commemorated by all Palestinians worldwide on the 30th of March, where in response to the Israeli government's announcement of a plan to expropriate thousands of dunams of land for security and settlement purposes.
So under that guise of security and settlements, just a wanton theft of Palestinian land. And it should be noted that during that period when they were going to confiscate it, they put a general curfew over all of the Palestinian villages because they knew this would rile them. And in fact, on that day, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the north to the south, from the Nakab to the Galilee, hit the streets and protested. And as Israel is wont to do, injured hundreds and killed 6 Palestinians on that day in 1976.
And of course, this momentum, this popular momentum, was led by several Palestinian community leaders and political party leaders. But I want to really give Tawfiq Zayyad, who was the head of the Communist Political Party back then, the credit for spearheading the protests and for also writing the poem, the poetry that later became the national anthem of this particular event. Tawfiq Zayyad. And later the PLO endorsed the 30th of March to be a national day for the Palestinians.
National Day of Resistance,
of resistance. And we call it Yawm al-Ard.
أناديكم
And the singer is Ahmed Kathrada singing the lyrics of Tawfiq Zayad Unadikum. And Nasser, it's worth mentioning that the Land Day is bigger than just what happened in the Galilee area, the confiscation. And today the Palestinians commemorate it as a day to remember the loss of land. And whether they are in West Bank, whether they are in Gaza or in exile. And I want to share what we used to do in Saudi Arabia in the 80s, for example. Please. The Palestinian community in Saudi Arabia. On the Land Day, on the Yom al-Ard, the Palestinians would share their culture with the non-Palestinian Arabs of Saudi Arabia, the Saudis, the Egyptians, or basically the European expats and American expats, by organizing events, telling them about the Land Day, telling them about the loss of land, and also sharing the Palestinian cuisine. There was, of course, and we can't
go past the food.
We can't go past the food, and also it became family day, not just political. And I would say that all Palestinian communities around the world have been doing that, and hopefully in maybe here in Australia in the coming years we will start doing things like that to share our love for our land.
Yeah. Well, we should actually say, as well as it being an opportunity to deliver on what is Palestine to expat communities, as you did in your youth, the reality today is that Land Day in Palestine, in Israel, whether it be in the Gaza Strip, inside Israel proper, or the West Bank, it's commemorated because not only are we remembering the land, we're remembering those that have been martyred in the process of that steadfastness.
Yes, of course.
And Israel never misses an opportunity. And this is our 41st year since 1976. And there's barely a year where they don't kill somebody else on Land Day. You know, every year there's one or two that that gets shot.
That's right. And also the land grab and land confiscation is a systematic policy of Israel against the Arab citizens of Israel and against the Palestinians of West Bank, and particularly in Jerusalem. And this is not something we just commemorate, something that happened 41 years ago and we just remember. It is a reality, and it's happening on daily basis. Yeah. And so it's very relevant, very recent. And
yes, if we talk about land, and we've got to remember from our apartheid report that came out from the UN, 97% of Israeli land is reserved for its Jewish population. So the Land Day is more and more popular every day. Yusuf, I want to talk to you and get your thoughts. From 1948 to 1968, the Palestinian citizens of Israel were under military law. In 66, they became part of civil law. 1967, occupation of West Bank. In 1976, this was the first time that the Palestinians of Israel actually rose as a voice, and that reconnected them to the struggle in the West Bank and outside. So,
yes,
do you remember that?
Absolutely. I think this was an important turning point in the national struggle because, like you said, Nasser, up until the Land Day, the 1976, the Palestinians inside the Green Line were viewed as, not viewed by us Palestinians, but were the Israelis tried to disconnect them from their Palestinian identity, from their Arab identity. And therefore, they thought they were able to do that. But the Land Day came and proved them wrong and showed them that the Palestinians of Israel are
Palestinian.
Palestinian and also an integral part of the Palestinian mosaic, whether they are in the West Bank, in Gaza, worldwide.
Or refugee camps in Lebanon or Jordan.
And it's you cannot detach any segment, any group of the Palestinian society from the rest, because it is Palestine and Palestinians. And the manifestation of that for the very first time, like you said, Nasser, was on the Land Day, the 30th of March 1976. So it has really great symbolic meaning beyond the representation of steadfastness and beyond the protest against land grab and confiscation, that it put the Palestinians of Israel in where they belong to in terms of identity.
Reconnected them, absolutely.
And reconnected them to the Palestinian national spectrum. We're heading towards the end of the show, Nasser, but in the last few minutes I want to mention that the Palestinian leader Marwan al-Barghouthi and the member of the Central Committee of Fatah Party, who's been imprisoned for more than 15 years, has called to lead a hunger strike on the Prisoner Day, which coincides every 17th of April. So the Palestinian prisoners are going to start an open hunger strike on the 17th of April in protest of the inhumane treatment of their basically jailers. And it is expected that thousands of prisoners will join the call for hunger strike. And in solidarity with the call, the Palestinians here in Melbourne are thinking of how we can support them, of some actions. So hopefully next Saturday, next week, we'll come back with more information of what will happen here in Melbourne and hopefully in other Australian cities in solidarity with our prisoners inside Israeli jails. And think of a situation where a prisoner, imagine if they find out that people in Australia, all the way in Australia, are actually supporting them. This will give them a bit of strength, hopefully, to face the injustices in jail. And
just to very close, sadly, Palestine lost another friend this past week, Ahmed Kathrada, who has died at age 87. He was a South African freedom fighter who spent 26 years in jail, 18 years with Nelson Mandela in the infamous Robben Island. He was affectionately known as Uncle Kathy, was a staunch friend of the Palestinian struggle and the BDS movement. Ahmed said in 2012, "I remember how apologists for apartheid South Africa internationally tried to argue that the South African situation was more complex than the ANC wanted to suggest. Our liberation struggle has many newfound admirers, some who often colluded with the apartheid regime. They not only claim to have been part of the struggle, but now want to give us lessons as to what it was about, and how it should be applied to the Palestinian struggle for justice." On his visit to Palestine, he said, "In our short stay here, we have seen and heard enough to conclude that apartheid has been reborn here. It is in its reborn form. It is, however, worse than its predecessor." Rest in peace, Comrade Ahmed Kathrada. We will
rest in peace, and may God's mercy be on his soul.
And we should tell our listeners, Yusuf, about our dedicated Palestine Remembered phone number, 0437 990 415. That's 0437 990 415. And if our listeners want to send us a text message, we're happy
questions.
Questions, absolutely.
Happy to receive your questions, your feedback. Anything you want to say, have your say about the show, and we will certainly be happy to respond. The number again,
0437 990 415.
And I guess, Nasser, with this we have come to the end of another edition of Palestine Remembered. And
we look forward to welcoming back our international correspondent.
Of course, next week, Robert, our international correspondent, is going to rejoin us with stories from the anti-APAC protests that were successfully, and I was really heartened to watch what they have done, and I'm sure Robert will tell us more next week. So, for this and more news, more stories, more views on Palestine, remember to tune in next Saturday, 9:30 in the morning. Until then, have a great time and salam.
الجهاد